Start the recording. Hello, welcome everyone to the what is it, September 26th, 2022 Select Board meeting for the town of Berlin. I am, for people who know me, this is not my normal voice. My voice decided to just, go to a new octave today, and we were just going to make do. It is also true that Chris Keefe, who is our vice chair, is going to be unable to attend tonight, and so we're going to do it with just Peg and I for this evening. And I do have a couple of things from Chris about a couple of agenda items that I will raise when we get there. She sent me some things. I did not respond to any of them because obviously responding would be a problem. So I just have them here. Let's see, meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access Channel and YouTube. Your voice, your image, or your telephone number may be recorded. And once again, I'm not wearing my reading glasses, so I'm gonna have to look up and people get to see my chin a lot when I look at the monitor above. We have two minutes, one from September 12th and one from September 22nd. The 22nd one is really just that one agenda item. Are you ready to make a motion, Peg?
Yep. Yeah, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 meeting and also the September 22nd, 2022 open session meeting.
I will second those. I don't think there'll be much more discussion. So Hawkins, aye.
Stone, aye.
Yay. Kristen, is there correspondence this evening?
I do not have specific correspondence outside of my town administrator's report.
Okay, and we'll get to that in the town administrator's report then. General comment, other people in the audience who have comments they want to say as we start getting ready for our public hearings. We're going to start, the first hearing will be the talking about the reconsidering the minutes we just approved from the 12th about the affordable rent increases at Rockwell. And I think there's a couple of people in the audience who we can bring forward for that, Mary.
You'd like them now?
Yeah, if you could, because I'll give a moment for anyone to raise hands, but I see who's in the audience and most people in the audience are here for agenda items coming forward. And so, welcome, David. Welcome back, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And so I will start us off a little bit here. Is that our sort of last formal meeting on the 12th, we discussed the rent increases that the Rockwell Apartments would like to have done. They asked for, I believe, a 6% increase for the 50% affordability, a 10 or 11% for the 80% affordability. We looked at it and decided that we thought it would be better. We were worried about those numbers, but we tried to do something that would just be a percent of income as rents. And I think David is representing the Rockwell, said there's some sort of logistical challenges and other issues with that and would like us to reconsider. And so I thought it might be worthy of us reconsidering. And so David, why don't you take it away with your thoughts and comments?
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Peg. And I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting on the 12th. I was told it was no opportunity to speak, but I appreciate you letting me have the opportunity to appear before you again and look at this. So just so you know, I mean, I think, in light of the fact that some of these rent increases at the different properties we work with are fairly large, I think that towns looking at these and maybe trying to allow something that's less than the maximum is totally fair and perhaps advisable. And so I'm not here to say you should, definitely approve the maximum that's simply tied to the income limits. However, when I got the notice that the board was considering tying the specific rents to tenants' actual income, that gave me slight heart palpitations because I think there are some real difficulties with that. One is, there are 21 affordable units at this property. I believe when you start tying tenants' specific rents to their income, which income can be calculated different ways, there are different ways to do it, in particular when people are self-employed, it can get really muddy about exactly what they make. or how you count things, I think you invite 21 opportunities for people to appeal and say, I disagree, I want to look at this. My rent should be $20 lower, $50 lower. And I think just from our perspective, the administrative burden that's inherent in that feels like it's going to be difficult. Who's going to be handling those appeals? And that's on top of just people that we deny. So, and that's just one property of sort of hundreds that we work with. But I think the grounds for appeal and trying to resolve those is tricky because there isn't just one way to calculate income. It can be different, and there can be, I think, valid differences of opinion. And frankly, we're hoping to avoid, at least 21 people each year coming back saying, I'd like to appeal this. I disagree with your determination. On top of that, I think there are questions about even if we could potentially agree on what someone makes, sometimes what someone makes isn't stagnant. And it can take them some time to complete the certification process with SEB. Sometimes it takes people 3 months. During the course of that 3 months, maybe they change jobs, maybe they get a raise, promotion. Now, all of a sudden, is their income what it was in, let's say, January when they started the process, or is it what they were making in March when we finally determined that they were eligible? I have concerns about what happens with households whose income changes in the middle of a lease. In the affordable program, you can't change households' rents mid-lease, but if households experience, I think, either an increase or a decrease in income mid-lease, do we create further grounds for either the property to say, hey, we should be getting more income from this person, and us saying, sorry, you can't? Or do we create opportunities for the tenant saying, hey, my income's gone down by $15,000, this rent's now too high, I want to revisit this? And what's the mechanism for that? I think I have concerns, properties often ask us about what their rents are going to be, and I know they're trying to forecast and do budgeting. And if we say rents are tied to income, I have no valid way to answer that. I think, they'll be sitting there sort of scratching their heads and not sure. I think, a lot of these properties we work with are understaffed. There's a lot of turnover in leasing offices that we work with. When we have one and sometimes two sets of rents, that's often enough to generate questions and making sure that they get things right. This property has different income tiers, and that in and of itself can be hard to sort of manage. When you talk about having 21 different sets of rents for every applicant, they're going to make a mistake. Someone's going to get it wrong. I think the opportunity.
Do you have something you might be, because the allowable, which I think Stephanie did a great job, is that the math did say allowable is I thought again it was 5% for the, or 6%, 5 or 6% for the 50%, and like 10 or 11% for the 80% of household. Is there because we, as you point out, that especially for lower income folks felt like a lot to ask. I know that even in the for-profits, people think their rents are going up by a lot too, but we're trying to at least make things affordable. Is there numbers or percentages that you think are both livable for you and still sort of not as big of an increase for the others?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that the town could do instead is, last November, DHCD created a new paradigm. They said, look, for brand new applicants, if you want to sort of institute the maximum rents that the program will allow, that's fine. But for existing tenants who there's more concern over, we're not letting you do more than 5%. So I think you could adopt that paradigm where you say brand new tenants, the numbers are the number, the rents are the rents. That's fine. People can kind of come in with clear eyes and open eyes about what rents are going to be. But limiting the increases for existing tenants, I think, to something like 5%, or if the town feels like it should be less than that, then that's something the town could kind of implement that I think would be workable, be more concrete, and I think fair to all parties.
Peg, do you have comments or questions?
I was just going over my notes. I was trying to find the figures that Stephanie provided. last week, and of course I couldn't find them, but, so David, just to, review, your feeling is that if we do it 30% based on income at times can be tough to judge, you know, whether it's, especially if you're self-employed, for that. And you're feeling that if we do that, that there's either you're going to be inundated with potential appeals, for that, saying, no, I'm not up here, I'm really here. So make my rent come down to here, because I've dropped. Do you see people, and I know that options aren't great. Oh, thank you, whoever found that, Mary. I'm hearing thunder, so let's just put a note out that if somebody disconnects, it's because of the thunder bumpers that are outside. David, do you feel that you'd be inundated with more people doing appeals, or you'd be inundated with more people walking away saying, I can't afford to live here, which could potentially cause, you know, vacancies and additional revenue flow?
You mean if it's tied to 30% of their
Yeah.
income?
Yeah, if people just say, I just can't, I gotta go.
No, I don't think it would be that. I think it would be more, there'd be a lot of appeals and questions about exactly what their income is, which you
Okay.
can argue till you're blue in the face. I think it's hard to sort of plan around that. I think DHCD's own notice, for example, Peg, says you should really give tenants 4 months advance notice of what their new rent's going to be. Well, guess what? 4 months before your lease is expired, we haven't even started the calculation. So in sentences that are really back to back in their own guidance, you've created something that's not workable. You can't possibly give someone the notice because you haven't even started. And then I think, you know, administratively, I just think, you know, you get 21 different sets of rents, properties that are understaffed, leasing offices with people turning over. And I don't know off the top of my head what turnover they've seen at this property. I'm just saying generally we work with a lot of properties and you see tons of turnover and people come in. It's just, I think the opportunities to get this wrong are frankly quite high when you're dealing with that many different sets of rents. It's just, it's even hard for us. We do rent updates for over 100 properties. And, you know, when you start going in there with 21 sets of rents for one property and you're, you know, doing it for 100 others, it's like, it's a lot, you know, those are long nights doing that.
So your recommendation was what, David? So 5% across the board. And then for new people, it's subject to where they are in their income. I just want to make sure that I have this right.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that if the town is inclined, you know, one possible alternative is for brand new applicants, the rents could just be set according to the way they are set in the program, which is
Okay.
not 30% of a tenant's actual income. It's sort of a 30% of a hypothetical tenant making 80% of income.
Okay.
So depending on the applicant, that rent may be more or less affordable depending on what they actually make. But that's the standard way to do it. That would be for new tenants.
Okay.
And I think if the board said, look, we're really interested in protecting the people who are currently residing there, and we are concerned that jumps in rent to the tune of whatever it might be, 7%, 8%, 10% is going to drive people out, we'd like to sort of limit it for the current tenants. I think that, you know, that would be a reasonable approach.
On that, the paperwork that flashed by, tenants pay their own electric, correct? Electric's not included, or is it?
Right, they pay their own electricity, yep.
And given the news last week from our friends, thank you, our friends at National Grid or was it Ever or somebody? You know, basically telling Eversource, basically telling everybody that electricity will go up, potentially up, you know, 66%. You know, you have to factor that into as to what that may run. All right.
I'm inclined to like the sort of for existing tenants at 5%, the newer tenants are allowed to do the at least for now, maximum allowable so that the people who currently are residing are protected in some respects. Stephanie, do you have any sort of comments? I mean, you were here for the presentation. I don't know if there's anything you could add to this or would like to add to this.
Yeah, I think the 5% across the board is, perfectly reasonable. It's, one of the options that we discussed at the last
Yeah.
meeting. Actually, I did notice with the 2022 list, it wasn't broken out between new tenants and existing tenants. But yeah, if we go with the maximum allowable increase for the new tenants, which is based on HUD's income, 80% income, for the Boston metro area. I mean, that's within guidelines, and that's certainly approvable. If that turns out, it's always something that we can look into again next year. If it turns out maybe
Right.
that was too much, maybe that was problematic, maybe not go with the full HUD amount for new tenants.
And Stephanie, you're right. I didn't break it out, but I'm happy to do that and recirculate that tomorrow. What the,
Yep.
the 5% increase for existing tenants. I'm happy to do that.
So Scott, if we go that route, can we I'm having really bad speaking issues tonight. Can we tentatively agree to approve it until we actually see it in writing and then, go through?
I think what we could do is we could put this, I think where you're going is we put this on sort of for next week agenda for more formal approval. But that David and Stephanie and those watching is that, I think Peg and I are on the same page. I can tell you, the Peg and I are at least are on the same page. Chris was generally from her previous meeting, was mostly interested in trying to protect the people who were there. And I would, not putting words into her mouth, but I can't imagine she would be at least a giant opposition to things. And so if we put that together, we could probably make this not as much a formal hearing as just an old business to
Yeah.
formally vote on things when we have the numbers in front of us. And our meeting is only just next Monday. Is that gonna, delaying one more week, David, is not gonna cause any major problems on your end, is it?
Not at all.
Especially since you have relatively high confidence that we're going to reconsider and vote to reconsider and do a 5% for existing and maximum allowable for new tenants. And that we'll look at it next year again. And maybe we'll try to be clearer next year that when we have this come up that we did, I don't know if I did this as a formal hearing last time we did it, or it was just under new business, but that we would, that at least relevant parties bringing forward to have being part of the conversation is really the way we like doing things in Berlin, to make sure we have the right information and can make good decisions. So I think next year we can make sure all the right people are here, so it doesn't have to get done twice. But again, we're open to fixing things as we have new information come forward.
Yeah, and David, we appreciate you coming through and kind of,
Yes.
Adding additional information. More information is never bad. So, when you kind of look at it and skin the cat the other way, you realize, oh, okay, didn't realize, or truly understand that trying to figure out 30% of something that might move makes a lot more work, for someone who's, maybe a traditional 40 hours, my $20 is my $20 is my $20 at the end of the week, type of thing.
Yep.
So appreciate more information for us.
Yeah, of course. And I really appreciate you willing to put this back on the agenda and hear from me on short notice. And I will, Stephanie, I will send you the updated calculations tonight, and you can present those, I think, to Scott and Peg next week, if that works.
Yeah.
Or before.
Yeah, and I don't think you use much here. If you present it to us, we can put it under old business. I don't like wasting a lot of people's time, but if you want to come back, that's great. I think it's going to be under old business. A relatively fast item is what I would expect.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so
Okay.
do we need a motion, or are we good for next week?
I think we're good till next week because we're not taking a formal action at this point. I think we've given David and Stephanie some direction that I think is likely to pass when we do it next week.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you both for coming. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
And then Mary, then our next hearing is going to be Dennis Farabee, our collector treasurer, on both the new Harper's payroll stuff and anything else going on in his department. And then Kristen, I don't know in some of these items, like how much you want us to sort of roll back to like the story of how we got to where we're at. We might do some of it anyway for audience members who do not tune in every week and memorize everything we say every week. But that, and if Dennis takes a little bit more, I might attempt to provide some of the story. He'd be closer to it and provide a way better version of it, I think, than I could. Oh, there he is.
Here I am. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hey, Dennis.
Hi, Peg.
Take it away for since Kristen is also new, just on the new payroll tracking software and the other stuff you're attempting to do with it, just how we got to where we're at and then where we're at and what we can be doing as even select board to help us continue moving it forward. And then get other stuff in your department.
Well, we pretty much weren't tracking anything on the payroll system, partly because of history and partly because things were divided up amongst different departments. And we attempted, probably 5 years ago to get this into the system, but we could never get it to work. And moving forward, we found out through the grapevine that there are certain people at the payroll company that do a pretty good job of it. And we've been working with that person since. And we're tracking vacation time, sick time, and personal time. Personal being the easy one. The other two come with some problems and some challenges. We've started out a few months back, and we met with Margaret, the former town administrator, June, and we talked about what personnel and they had come up with as a system of getting rid of trying to track long-term sick and incorporating a sick pay plan that would just feed into itself and up to a maximum. So we're dealing with kind of a new change to the employee policy and old sins. For example, the Harper's, one of the challenges still is the system only tracks on date of hire. And as you know, people who started here and worked their way up, became benefit qualified, might have a 10-year gap between the date of hire and when benefits start. So the only option I can see after talking to Harper's, that's exactly how the system works. Date of hire, that's how they calculate the sick and the vacation. Once again, the personal thing isn't a big deal. You either have 2 days or you have 4 days. That's a easy one. And that is something that gets dangerous, and that is to change the date of hire to the date of benefit. And in a section for comments, note that person really was here 15 years ago. I don't like it, but I can't think of another way of doing it. One of the problems with changing the date of hire would be when you get into retirement and we're tracking down credit for buybacks, and it's all manual now. We were on a paper system for many years. So there are people that are here that were paid back when we had tissue paper, and it was written on when there was enough money to pay people. And that takes forever to go through to try to find the correct information. The other problem I see with this thing, and we're going to do it, we had planned to do it at the end of October, beginning of October. It has to be done in a short window to get the data in and be accurate. If you don't get it in accurate, Harper said it's a nightmare trying to fix it. It's just not, add two days to Scott's thing. It doesn't work that way. So we want to make sure it goes in accurately. And we have the chart that I built. It's a 3-page chart for every person is on it. We have the fire agreements, which are a little bit different than the police agreements, the unions. the 3 people that are paid by contract. And then some of us that have an appointment letter once a year. And those things we can figure out. But Margaret suggested we hold off until Kristen came aboard and have a meeting and target November. And I think we'll be able to make it work with a little bit of pain. But the reports that come out of it afterwards really do track costs for what we owe people in the future. I mean, they're great reports that I've looked at. And I think that's it on the project. I have a lot of charts that I built that will calculate people. One of the problem is we have people that, like myself at 37 hours, someone else is at 33 hours. And those aren't hard-coded categories. And they could be, but then you get more and more codes that you just have to track. And the other part I haven't quite figured out with Harper's, when people go from 20 to 30, you know, people do move up the ladder here sometimes. So it's a very complicated system, even with an expert. Kristen does know someone who's been doing it for a long time. We didn't get to talk a whole lot during our interview, but I think before we do a whole lot more, we should get together, Kristen and June or Amy and I with the Harper's lady and go through it one more time, just to make sure it's perfect when it takes off. Any questions or?
Dennis, I had a quick,
Go for it, Kristen.
I was gonna say, I had a quick question because I've been thinking about this since we sat down. In Leicester, the same issue had happened where the accruals were not being tracked on payroll, and Leicester uses Harper's as well. When this project was initially taken on, they basically put in an initial amount of accruals per person and then had it accrue from there. And that addressed that date of hire issue that you were talking about. Is that something that's possible or that has been discussed with Harper's?
Well, actually, yeah, she is aware of it, because one of the things we're doing, apparently not to penalize anyone, is to put the normally issued on the first of the year, like if you have 2 weeks coming to you, it's there on day one. And the same thing with vacation.
Right.
And that is doable.
Okay. So even though you're starting kind of mid-year, you could basically start with whatever those accruals are to say the end of October, and then you could have it continue on from there. And
Right.
that would solve, you know, perhaps your date of hire gap issue, because you could put in an initial amount if there was any retro or rollover hours for sick or what have you that need to be included.
The problem is when you go from your 4-year to 5 to 9 years and you go by the start date, how long you've been there. That changes as the system's moving along.
So are there not places within the process that things could be manually entered, or I understand the goal is to get it automated, but there's probably going to be a few situations where it's a bit challenging and on a, you know, some of the outlying employee situations.
Oh yeah, you can overrule everything that's in it, but you just have to know how to do it and do it at the right time.
Okay,
So that's why I'd like to have one more meeting with them,
Yep.
sure,
because they make it sound like easy peasy, and it's not.
sure.
Peg, do you have a question?
So, but Dennis, you have all this information somewhere, correct? You know, that you have the history of date of hire is correct. There's no question, you know, about that if I'm going to pick on Amy because she's not in the audience, and I'll pick on her. You know, Amy was hired at, and I'm making it up, June, don't yell at me. You know, Amy was hired at 20 hours a week. And then, you know, Amy got promoted and she's now working 32 hours a week. And because she's now working 32 hours a week or whatever the benefit, you know, eligible is, benefits are now coming out, you know, at that where she's been increased. So you but you have the history of everybody. It's just trying to figure out how to put it in the system. Because I was confused on one comment that you made, and of course I wrote it down. Where is it? Something about, we know what we owe people in the future, but we don't have any retirement put aside yet. So what would we owe people in the future?
When you hit certain levels of service, your benefits change, the total.
Okay.
So you 2 weeks for the first 4 years, then you get 3 weeks a year, and you work your way up to 5 weeks, 20 more years. So the system has to know when that happens.
Okay.
And it's not, the other thing that I don't think we have a good handle on, because I wasn't tracking it, is the number of hours that are in the long-term sick total. You know, it's kind of tracked in accounting. It was kind of looked at here, but nobody, that unless June knows of something, that's one of the big things that we've got to figure out, how to figure out what's there and get it in the system. So in other words, if you have leftover sick time or vacation,
Yeah.
vacation's easy, it just pops in maximum. But the long-term sick at one time was a separate track. This will be automatic based on the way Harper's has set up tracking sick time with an unlimited amount of time you can accumulate up to the maximum.
Okay.
And then if you use it, it's smart enough to know, hey, now you can earn one more day because you just used one more day.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things we have to work out, but
No, and I appreciate that. For some reason, my brain didn't go there. I know, shocking that Peg's brain doesn't work, but you know, when you said future, that I'm at, you know, this level year, and then when I go to this level year tomorrow, I get more time. So that's what you meant by future. So thank you for clarifying that.
you know, there will be the challenge of someone who goes different hours in the middle of the process. We'll
Right.
just have to make sure Harper's handles it the right way.
And then one of the intents of this project, not only is to so employees have more clear information what they have for sick and vacation, but in theory was to take less administrative hours. So there's not as many sort of manual spreadsheets. When you're done, this is going to take less hours to process and track sick and vacation.
Well, it should be automatic based on the tables that we have.
Yep.
Of course, there'll be a couple of oops that either Harper's finds or I find or June finds. But once we fix those,
Right.
it's the same for every person in a category with just different hours.
Right. And not that we'd look at cutting anybody's work hours, but this would allow you to get onto things that are potentially more important to be focusing on than thousands of spreadsheets and pieces of paper that track people's sick and vacation, correct?
Right.
So with the, God, whenever we met in person, when Margaret was still here and personnel was still there, and we, you know, the selectmen sat in the back and waved. It was like our first picture of the three of us together. So any changes that those personnel policies and procedures have made, they'll be represented. They're already being counted. They need to be added in what you're doing to get the information in the
personal
system. Yeah.
Days. It's
No.
easy because it's
No.
based on, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry,
No,
no, it's the personnel committee changed the personnel policies that adjusted
Right.
benefits. And
Right,
those
so
changes are
not-
you're gonna be able to incorporate those, correct, Dennis?
So not so,
That's
right,
basically-
not so much personal days, but changes that they made, that we agreed to, that we voted on, that it's reflected in the system. So there's a tracking, so no one ever gets into the situation of, no, you know, the book says, and then your paperwork says, no, I say this. So just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, it's basically paralleling the new employee policy manual that came out of that
Okay,
with fractions of time instead of 1 day per month. With 2 months, you don't get it. Now it's over a 12-month period, but it, like if you had 40-hour work week, you'd have a set formula that fractionalizes it so it equals what you'd earn over a 12-month period.
okay,
I'm a little worried about that, but once it's in the computer, hopefully,
Right,
can
which
explain
is
it.
more in line with more employers do these days anyways. You earn one
Yep.
paycheck's worth of your benefits each paycheck.
And of course, the
So-
only other thing that I'm not privy to, and I don't want to be, is any kind of a change that comes out of a union negotiation that, you know, would have to get in and change the tables. That's,
Are there other things that we should be great for the select board to know about going on in the treasurer and collector's office?
there's a run on banks lately. I don't know if you followed it and follow it or not, but there's certain banks that give us different terms because we're a municipality. And they actually have experts that compete against each other for the borrowing and the bonds and all that. And in exchange, they do no charges for wire transfers and things that can add up when you do as many as we do. Those banks are disappearing. Century Bank, which was one of the quality ones, is now Eastern Bank. And Belmont Savings, once again, a small but a very healthy, well-rated bank, is now owned by People's United. And in a 6-month period, I have it down here somewhere, one of those was just bought out by I hadn't even heard of them, MT Bank. So one of them changed 2 times within a 6-month period. And so you have to learn how to log in, and they don't care how much money you have, which these smaller banks do. They like the money that we put in, $1 million at a time. And they charge a lot of rates for everything they do, for the account, for the wire transfer and ACH. You know, it just adds up like that. So fortunately, there's still a few that are around. You've probably heard of Unibank. We use a bank called, where did we go? I tried to write them all down, down in Newburyport. And they're all kind of not endorsed legally, but we all talk to each other, and they're the ones that we use at the Treasurer Collector School. They put on presentations, you know, they're rated green. On that note, with borrowing, and of course, we're not doing a whole lot unless something comes down the line. As you probably figure out, the rate's going up. Up until 6 months ago, a couple of towns got 0.75 was their interest rate. Unbelievable. And the highest at the time was maybe 2.5, 3 if you had a bad day. Now, the last one that come out this month, the borrowing has already gone up to over 2%, no, mid 2%, and some are as high as 4%. But the thing that when you study it is what we've called the premium, and that's the profit you make for stock sold over par or your bonds. And at one time, the premium was hitting 10% of what you were borrowing. So if you were borrowing $1 million, you only had to technically borrow 900. Huge savings. When we did it, it all depends on what's on the news that day. It goes like this, up and down. There was one in this one, I had to chuckle. They borrowed $30 million. It was a big city. And they only had $630,000 in premium. Another one borrowed $3.5 million, and they had the same amount on a lower credit rating. So, yeah, it's just going crazy over there. I'm glad we're not borrowing. At least I haven't heard of anything in the short future, unless we get a big chunk of land or something we want to buy. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but Margaret always told me to keep it short.
Yep. And we're still well rated. Our bond rating is still pretty good though, isn't it, Denny?
AA+. We
Yeah.
just can't quite get to AAA.
Still AA+ is still really, really good.
Yeah. And once you do it for as long as I have, and you go through all these reports every month, sometimes it doesn't really matter. If you have horrible rating, you borrow like you're the Commonwealth of Mass and you have AAA, you know, it's wacky out there. So But it's good to know that they think highly of Berlin.
Good.
Going back to when I first came here, I remember the ratings were almost in the hopper.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, Peg?
No, Dennis, I made my notes on my notes, so I appreciate you, Dennis. Thank you.
And I'll keep
Yes.
you posted on the progress with hoppers and stuff, because,
Yep,
you know, it's gotta be November. We just can't keep spreading this thing out.
yep.
Yeah,
It's a
agreed.
lot of work. We're doing the work, but at some point, we just have to push the button.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'm glad too that Kristen has experience with this, so I'm sure that she's going to be able to move the needle along a little bit quicker.
Right.
Do my best.
Well, it's easier to do it at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, great. Well, thanks a lot, Denny, for coming and giving us these updates. That was very nice to hear.
Nice to see you, Dennis. It's raining out. Be careful when you leave.
Yeah, I can
Well, you
I can
know
hear
what
it
the
on
sad
Monday.
part is? I've been
Yeah.
down 2 people for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
One of them went to Italy for 3 weeks.
Ah,
And it's like, oh, if only.
Right,
And Edie Brewer's had some challenges and she's been out. But she'll be back. She's the file clerk and does a great job. We miss
Good.
her. So think of Venice and then this project.
yes.
great. Thank you,
Very,
Dennis.
very much, Denny.
Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Let's see, I think that takes us to the town administrator report. The first formal town administrator report by our new town administrator.
No
Take it away,
pressure.
Kristen.
Okay.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure. Thank you, everyone. I am on day 7. So we are trucking along, made it through a first full week, and things have been going very well. At this point, I've met with pretty much every department head and chair of every board and committee. There's a few stragglers that are coming in this week. But for the most part, I've had a great opportunity to sit down, chat with folks about some of the outstanding projects they have going on, learning about the structures of their departments, their boards and committees, as well as what their future needs are, what their immediate concerns are. And so that I am compiling into a very large set of lists. So I kind of call them buckets. So I have a to-do list, I have concerns and discussion items, I have some items for department head meetings and some items that, you know, yes, we need to figure these out, not really sure what we're going to do with them, but we need to, you know, address these. So what I'm doing also is I did have, as I mentioned, I believe it was a coffee talk, the privilege of sitting down with Margaret, the former town administrator, for about 4 hours and going through a list of projects that she provided with me. And the great thing is everything started making a lot more sense as I sat down with each person related to each item. And I am intending on having a list of kind of outstanding projects, procurement items that I have identified for the board at the next meeting, which, as Scott noted, is next Monday. There are a couple items that are on for this evening that I spoke a bit more in depth about. My report is a little shorter than it normally would be, but this is the first week. So you will be taking up the fire union MOA this evening, which we'll be discussing in a bit more detail. We put out the call for the FY24 capital plan projects. I do apologize. I believe I attached the incorrect document. It said FY23 on it, so I need to resend that back out. So my apologies on that. That'll be going back out shortly. And they're due back to our office no later than October 31st. So that the capital planning committee has enough time to review and prioritize all of the funding requests that will inevitably come in. And one other thing that I worked on last week was the Highway Barn Solar Project and the Meta Grant, which likely needs to be the item of a future board agenda. So on the positive side, I was able to finalize with June and legal counsel's assistance the letter of intent for the solar purchase power agreement for those solar panels on the DPW building. There is a consultant that was hired to help with those negotiations. That's Beth, I believe, Greenblatt.
Blatt.
Thank
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
from Beacon Integrated Solutions. So Beth's services will be needed as that process continues on down the line in terms of the actual number negotiations for the PPA. Unfortunately, that meta grant does expire September 30th. We did ask for an extension. It was not granted. There is another grant funding round that comes out in November. Beth has already sent me the notice of funding availability, and we can certainly apply. I don't know how well the state will look on it, considering we only spent about half of the 12,500 allocated, but we can certainly try. Otherwise, we will need to identify a funding source to pay for the cost of negotiating that ultimate PPA. So there's a bit of a process that's going to go on now that we've signed that letter of intent. Select is actually going to work with the state. They're going to submit all of their documentations and rebates and rates, and they will basically give a calculation back to us, and we will negotiate that agreement. So likely we'll need some more guidance on that going forward from Beth, and funding to go along with that as well. And I don't know if you want me to keep going and ask questions at the end, or you want to interrupt me, or feel free to do whatever you like.
In general, we let you go.
Okay,
Peg and I are both really good at interrupting, but
Great.
we ask you the questions at the end.
great. I'm not shy to interrupt either, so that's great. And then just some future items. Next Monday, the 3rd, there will be a public hearing held at 7:15 p.m. to set the FY23 tax rate. Molly the assessor will be giving that presentation. That's been noticed in the newspaper. It will be published tomorrow. June and I have started talking about getting FY24 budget preparations underway and working first to update the budget calendar. So we will be working on that in very short order. I'm also working, as Peg is aware, on trying to get some updates to the town website. And that's something I want to speak about a bit at a future meeting, in terms of kind of having someone who's a webmaster of some sort for updates to the website that departments and boards would submit. Now, we'll talk more about it, but I think what you can do is you can keep board and committee websites generally updated in terms of who's on the boards, what their terms are, because those come through our office. But content-wise, that information would really need to be submitted by the board or committee, and then you'd need to have someone designated to update that information. Somebody would need to be trained on how to use the Civics Plus website program. So that's something that I think will improve kind of communication-wise, as we can update that as we go. I'm also working with Chief Clark on the radio project, which I know is a big priority, and I'll have an update on that at the next meeting. I think I've started on a good path forward. There's a few more things I need to check before I'm ready to give you that update, but I will have it for you on Monday. I'm also working with the town of Clinton to execute the IMA for the bucket truck, which we do have. I spoke with the highway superintendent today. There was a issue with it, the truck itself when it came in. That is fully under warranty. It is being repaired. So it's just a matter of finalizing that agreement with the town of Clinton. And I have reached out to the town administrator on that, just waiting to hear back. I'm also working on a memo regarding open meeting law requirements. It's very similar to something that I had done in Leicester that we issued annually to boards and committees that basically outlined the process of, everything from reserving a room to posting a meeting to the basic tenets of open meeting law, and how to make sure, you kind of steer clear of getting yourself in trouble. And I am hoping to get that out to folks as kind of a helpful set of pointers in upcoming weeks. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, I'm culling through all of my notes from all of my meetings. I have almost an entire notebook full, and I will have that list of outstanding projects and issues that I've identified to date for the board on Monday. And that's my report.
Great. At Coffee Talk, I'm just assuming you have questions, Peg, so I'm just gonna go first and just defer to you in a moment. But at Coffee Talk, Paul McGutt from the Board of Health said he had some concerns about projects being dropped or missed as the transition between town administrators. I just sort of asking whether or not it'd be a good idea, probably, or saying is that to reach out to him to see if you can get directly from him what he thinks some of those are. Because I'd hate to think that, I mean, I don't know everything going on in the town, but if he's worried about a project being dropped or missed or not sure where it's at, I think it's best to just reach out to him directly and get directly from the horse's mouth, but it might be and work on it. And then, although this probably could come under board questions and comments, we did put on the agenda just potentially an update on the Horseshoe Pond property. But I know that Conservation Commission did with Sudbury Valley trustees did an open house on Sunday. I actually was out there for a little bit, managed to get my little chat with them and walk in the woods in before the rain started. And it was nice to see, but that for people who didn't hear at Coffee Talk, that Sudbury Valley trustees now officially owns the land. And the next stage is potentially moving the ownership from them to us, but that is now really going to be conserved, whether, even if that took a while to get the legal stuff taken care of, the land is now protected at this point, which is a really great thing. And again, the stuff that was in the Clinton item and was said at Coffee Talk, but is still, I'm just floored by the $870,000 we got as a town, as a grant to help pay for that. And so the risk we took as a town, and I know some people in FinCom are having some stressful moments about what happens if all this falls apart and how much the town could be on the hook for. But because we stuck our neck out, I think that helped a little bit the grantors to say, gosh, the town's willing to take this risk, we're willing to take the risk too. And we're not going to spend nearly as much money of town tax dollars on that property as we've approved at town meetings. Some of that money is going to come back to be for future projects in the town. And I think that's where I could stay for now. Peg?
So Kristen, you talked about energy. I sent you a email, I don't know, 3 minutes before the meeting regarding some net metering information. So
Okay.
just to kind of keep you in the loop, I know that Margaret was involved with that, and I noticed that you weren't on there because they probably don't know that you exist. So you're added. So come on along to energy. We can figure that one out.
All right.
And then the for Civic Plus, so I think it was last year, Margaret had Civic Plus in here. They did a training, it's recorded, they did a step-by-step. I can forward that to you if you want. I know that, she kind of felt that, the updates in terms of, hey, Billy's not on the committee anymore, he's been replaced by Sally, that should be back on the committees, or if there's a document that needs to be uploaded, that should be back on the committee. So I don't know which committees. I mean, I ran through them and there's a boatload of changes that need to be made. So, and that was just like first past first column on the Town of Berlin website. But if you need help with those, because remember I told you I would yell at you and I will continue to yell at you if you step up and say, oh, I'll do it. Oh, I'll do it. Oh, I'll do it. No. So if you need help, with that, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll learn, just take me in the back to, room 227 or whatever, where the big TV is, and walk me through, and I can help out and with that, because to me, it's important. As I look at other towns' websites and I look at ours and I'm like, oh, but at least get it current, and then we can make it pretty, for the folks looking for information in town.
Sure.
And that was, and Kristen, that was one of the items on our ARPA list, was to talk about doing something with the town website, but I guess we need to define what that something is
Yes,
before we can go out and say, hey, here's $80 bazillion. Come fix us,
Well,
type of thing.
And that something could be phases of things too, because it could be we pay a small amount of money to hire an admin person just to go through and update all the towns and committees and contact information. And then something that's bigger that is sort of an overhaul of it. I sometimes want to make sure we don't make sure that the perfect is the enemy of the good. So
Right.
Right, no, I mean, but just in terms of somebody has an email, like with the chiefs, Ken has an email, Eric doesn't have an email, you know,
Mhm.
Eric, there was a reference that Ken is still our interim fire chief. Ken hasn't been our interim fire chief for a couple years. So there's just those inequities that I think are easily taken care of, you know, people who are no longer on committees, you know, take them out, get them updated. So as I said, you know, easy peasy ones. I'm happy to, you know, I'm happy to help. Give me one. I'll see what I can do to it. Hopefully I don't kill it, but, you know, again, spread the wealth and, you know, not, oh, I'll do it. Yeah.
Well, and what Peg's referring to is I did the website in Leicester. I'm very familiar with Civics Plus. I will tell you that I found in Leicester, if you leave it up to everybody to update it, you get a
No one
lot
does
of
it.
nothing because it is confusing for
Yeah.
a lot of folks, particularly volunteers, that they're already stretched thin. They're not getting paid. They're doing this with a million other things. And obviously we're grateful for the time that they give. I had a very simple approach in Leicester, and it was keeping the homepage up to date, keeping the board and committee names, terms,
Yeah.
department names, terms up to date. For employees, for departments, I would say when your website needs to be updated, you need to let us know and you need to send the content written out. And then all someone has to do is copy and paste it and upload it, and it's really simple.
Yeah.
But we found that we really did need to keep those board and committee databases up to date. And then every now and again, I'd get an email from the Arts Council and they'd say, can you throw this flyer up on the website? Can you,
Yeah.
you know, advertise this event? And a lot of that stuff we just did through the homepage. So at least your front facing part is up to date.
All right, well, you know what, offers out there. Let me know if you need me to come down and we'll set up some time and get it off and running.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all I had. I'm going easy on you, Kristen, because this is your first TA meeting, so you
That's
know what?
very nice.
Gloves come on, gloves are off after next week, so you know.
Fair enough.
Okay,
And so let's jump to the next agenda item then. There wasn't really anything under old business. And so new business, we have the ADA grant that you're writing.
Yep.
Peg, I think my intent was just to make sure you had select board approval on it when you wrote it. I know you've been writing a bunch of things.
Yeah,
I don't know
so-
where you're at with it or the timing of it.
well, so it needs to go this week. The 30th is the deadline, so thank you, Mary, for getting Victoria's letter to me. That will be part of the package. So what you see on the screen, you know, just to update everybody. So in 2020, CMRPC did a self-evaluation of the town for ADA requirements, and there is not one municipal building in this town that was spared for that. So the advice that I was given, we tried last year, Margaret and I tried last year, and frick, shot down. So the advice that I was given this year was go smaller and get things done within 6 to 9 months. So if you look at this list, there are many things that are similar in the different buildings, you know. So the first one about the doors. This is why I asked Fred if they could do it. The intent is not to have Highway do it. I will not ask them to do it. I have put enough fluff in these costs that I want to explain that we already have a stretched facilities department, and this is why we're going to hire local contractors that are familiar with the buildings and the history of the buildings. So there are many items that repeat in terms of, you know, hey, how heavy is the door to open it? How long does it need to be, you know, opened so that it doesn't like snap shut on somebody? You know, the phone in the vestibule, it's too high. So, you know, maybe this is something that we need to reach out to Devon's and say, hey, who do you work with? Come in and lower the phone. Doorknobs, well, doorknobs aren't compliant. The sinks, you know, same thing. The faucet's not on long enough. So I'm thinking a plumber can come in and leave, you know, turn whatever mechanism needs to be turned on to make it run longer. You know, dispensers are too high. The sink piping is not wrapped, and that's really through all the bathrooms. So the reason why I group them is to say, if you're putting a wrap on a pipe in the downstairs bathroom when you first come in, then you can walk over to where the cell is for fire, and you can walk into the admin bathroom, and then you can go upstairs to the two bathrooms upstairs and get those done. You know, and the same thing over, you know, there's a couple right here for police and fire. You know, things are sticking out, sanitizers are too high. You know, you go over to the town hall, oh, shocking, look, the door, the weight of the door and the time to open the door. So that's why if you look over in the far column, I tried to toss in costs for parts, and what I did is that they gave costs, but that was in 2020, so I just increased them all, for that. So that's all this was. I think the total cost, if, and we all know Peg's math, is somewhere around $8,000. So I'm kind of hoping that the thought is, hey, Mass, the state has, and I'm making up the number, $200,000 to give for ADA grants, and they give out $190,000 to all these different towns, and they just have this teeny tiny bucket of money left over. And that's why I'm hoping then Berlin can swoop in and get that teeny tiny bucket of money. And then next year, after all these are done, then we can start to look at the next level in that evaluation and fix things on a larger scale that are going to take more than 6 to 9 months, and that are certainly going to cost more than $8,000 for one item. So that was the thought behind this. So, and Kristen, I've got some more information. I know that you said that you were going to take a look at my narrative. There's another woman in town. She's on our finance committee. Woo, woo. Thank you, Julie. She's been putting some narrative together too. So I will zip that over to you. So if we can get that all finalized and get it ready to roll for Friday, then in it goes, fingers crossed, and we are off and running.
Right, and so one of Chris's comments, she would like to have seen it before we sent it out, but she also was understanding we could have been under a time frame, and so.
I can't send it out, Scott. It's a web form, so
Yep.
I've got 20 minutes to complete
Yep.
it.
Yep, you said that before too as well, so.
Yep.
Because you've been writing the grant, I think I will make the motion, which is odd for a chair, but since our options are limited, I would like to make a motion that we approve sending out the grant for about $8,000 to do ADA stuff that Peg has listed in her document.
Okay. I second it.
Yes. It would be strange for you not to.
I know.
Hawkins, aye.
And Stone Eye.
And I think that is good because that now allows you in your narrative, of course, that this is something that is approved as a priority by the select board and not just a really great idea that you were moving forward on.
Okay, cool. All right, Kristen, I'll get that over to you probably tonight. And then when you're ready to roll, just because what I've done for those watching, so on the form online, there's different headings for the form. So all I did is that I cut and pasted them and I dropped them in a Word file, and I'm just writing the information. So when it comes time to hit the form, I open it, I cut, I paste, I cut, I paste, I repeat, and I submit, because by the time I type it, I guarantee you I'm out of time. So that's what Kristen has, is the words of those sections.
And I just wanted to add too, that I think it's a smart approach. Those grants are often challenging to get because they're looking at communities that, either have a really glaring issue that needs to be addressed, or do not even have an ADA plan at all. So to be able to kind of say, well, our project is not enormous. Maybe you have a project that comes in at $190,000 and you have 10K left over. Well, we kind of fit right into that niche. I think it's a smart approach.
Yeah.
I'm also bummed that I don't think we're getting the credit as a smaller town that had an ADA study done, has a list of things that need to get done, and that we are trying to find a way to fund to get some of these things done.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of money. I can tell you Leicester applied and got rejected 2 years in a row for this grant for town hall improvements, but went in for about $150,000. So I think this makes sense. Hopefully the approach will work better than it worked in Leicester.
Yep. Well, we'll give it a go. And as you said, hopefully the answer is yes. And if it's no, then guess what? This time next year, I'm annoying you all once again. And, we'll find better narratives and we'll push it out and give it a whirl. So, perfect.
Let's see then, the next agenda item being the Juneteenth holiday amendment memo of MOA, memo of authority, memo of understanding, MOA, memo agreement. There we go, with the firefighter union. I try really hard not to use letters and acronyms if I don't have to. Go for it, Kristen.
All right. So I discussed this last week with legal counsel. And I got filled in kind of on the backstory, which was that on July 11th of this year, the select board did vote unanimously to add Juneteenth to the list of recognized holidays under Article 6 of the Fire Union Collective Bargaining Agreement, also affectionately known as a CBA. And that is to begin in FY23. So it is not a retro, it is a forward-moving item. Any change to a CBA does require a memorandum of agreement or an MOA to be drafted and signed by both parties. So what we have before you this evening is a request for a vote to approve and execute this MOA specific to just adding Juneteenth to the list of holidays beginning in FY23 and moving forward as drafted, reviewed, and approved by legal counsel.
So moved.
Second, I don't believe there's a lot of discussion on this. Hawkins, aye.
Stone eye.
Boards, questions, comments, and liaison updates. Do you have some, Peg?
Yeah, just a couple. So I don't know who was running. Obviously, there was a bike race in town this weekend or something that was going on in town because there's a lot of, it's either BCC or BBC yellow signs that are all over the town. So I don't know who put them up, if they had approval to put them up. Mary, I don't know if you can add anything, if this is a Chief Shartner questions. But, you know, it kind of goes back to putting signs on poles that we don't own. And, you know, they're yellow, they're hard to miss. And I think we had to chase them last year to take them down as well. So they're easy to go up, but they seem to stay up. So if we could get those down, those would be awesome. There was some information on the mattress recycling program that came out in the MMA Weekly. I sent it off to the Board of Health. Paul McKelk is going to tune in. So hopefully that will help them.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
We lost
froze.
Peg mid-sentence.
Oh.
We will give her a moment to try to come back.
Get some information out and then,
You disappeared for a moment there, Peg.
all right, am I back?
You are back at this point.
Okay. I had to laugh. It said that my connection is unstable. For a minute, I thought my computer insulted me. So no, all it was on conservation, there's just a few issues. 40 Ks, they're still having problems with, Melly, am I gone?
No,
Okay, 40 Ks, they're still having issues with people on
ATVs. This will be fun.
four-wheelers. It's a safety issue and,
Yep.
okay. Then you know what? I'll do it next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It looks like the storm is affecting you on more on your side of the town than ours. I don't really have any updates this week at this point, so we might be just ready for a motion to adjourn. I do expect us to have a slightly longer meeting next week because we already have a couple of hearings, including the tax rate setting, which is really like what is our offset of commercial to residential. It is actually a more complicated formula. It takes a while for Molly even to just explain what the formula is, never mind what votes we're going to end up taking. And I think we also have the Arts and Cultural Society coming in to talk to us as well. And so we'll look forward to seeing people next week. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
But I was hoping, I wonder what happened if there's not enough like, I will second Hawkins, aye.
Stone eye.